You know, usually when you sit down for a high-stakes game of poker, there's, well, a baseline level of predictability.
Right.
You know the rules, you can see your own cards, and you know that eventually, someone is going to have to show their hand.
Yeah. I mean, there's an inherent mathematical structure to the bluffing, right? Everyone at the table operates under the exact same physical reality.
Exactly. But imagine sitting at a table where half the players are bluffing. The stakes are the actual structural survival of an entire country. And the cards aren't just being flipped, they are, actively rewriting the rules of the game as they land on the felt.
It's a completely wild scenario.
It is, and that is the exact scenario playing out today.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into a massive structural earthquake in Canadian federal politics that is happening right now, today, April 14th, 2026.
It's a profound shift, and to understand the mechanics behind it, we're analyzing a single, incredibly dense, data-heavy academic paper by Dr. Farid Novin.
Right. It's titled Bayesian Game Theory and Canada's Political Trajectory to 2030. Yeah. Now, a quick framing note before we get into the weeds here.
Sure.
This paper deals with incredibly charged real-time politics.
Oh, absolutely. The governing liberals, the conservative opposition, subnational separatist movements, it's a lot.
It's a minefield. But, Dr. Novin isn't writing a political manifesto here, and frankly, neither are we. We are looking at this purely as a clinical mathematical model of human behavior under extreme economic stress. So we're not taking sides.
Definitely, which is exactly how we need to approach the news breaking today. I mean, Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal Party has just secured a majority government.
Right.
They now hold 174 of the 343 seats in the House of Commons. But the thing that makes this an absolute anomaly is that there was no general election.
No, not at all.
Millions of people did not go to the polls in a national campaign. This happened through a creeping, highly strategic consolidation of power.
Yeah, the consolidation you're talking about is the culmination of three major by-election sweeps today, specifically in University Rosedale, Scarborough Southwest, and Terrebonne.
Wow, 3 at once.
Yeah, but the math of a majority also relied on 5 recent parliamentary floor crossings since late 2025.
Wait, 5?
5, where members of the Conservative and New Democratic parties actually switched sides to join the governing Liberals.
Let's actually pause on that mechanism for a second because, crossing the floor sounds like a polite parliamentary procedure, but the reality is brutal.
Oh, it's incredibly dramatic.
Right. An elected official is physically standing up, walking across the aisle, and sitting with the party they spend years campaigning against.
Yeah.
It requires alienating the voters who just elected you, and, it requires massive behind-the-scenes backroom deals to guarantee you a safe landing.
Exactly.
So to go from a fragile minority government to a consolidated majority just by picking off by-elections and convincing opposition members to betray their own teams, that is a massive shift in executive authority.
Right. It really is. And to understand the motivation behind a shift like that, you have to look at the macroeconomic environment outlined in the source material.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Well, the economic context makes this political victory highly counterintuitive. We're looking at a Canadian economy facing incredibly sluggish growth projections, just 1.1 to 1.2% for 2026.
That's practically stalling.
Yeah, and this isn't just a natural business cycle downturn. The primary driver here is a wall of U.S. tariff-induced constraints.
Yeah, and the data the author provides on this is stark. Effective tariff rates have climbed above 6% for exports from Canada's industrial cores, specifically Ontario and Quebec.
Right.
And for you listening, you have to remember how integrated those provinces are into U.S. manufacturing. A single car part might cross the Canada-U.S. border 4 or 5 times before the vehicle is finished.
Exactly.
Slapping a 6% tariff on every crossing exponentially destroys profitability.
Which is severely impacting capital-intensive industries. Like the paper highlights the recent announcement of 1,000 layoffs at Algoma Steel.
Wow, 1,000 jobs.
1,000 jobs. And that isn't just a statistic. That is a foundational hit to regional supply chains and local economies. Non-energy goods exports across the board are contracting.
And while those critical export revenues are drying up, the federal government's spending has remained intensely expansionary.
Right.
The paper notes the federal deficit is now approaching $80 billion, sitting at about 2.5% of GDP.
Yeah, and a massive chunk of that is because the government finally hit the 2% NATO defense spending target,
which pushed defense outlays to $63.4 billion alone.
Just on defense, yeah.
They are doing this while simultaneously trying to pump billions into domestic bottlenecks,
Right.
like housing and infrastructure.
Let's break down what an $80 billion deficit actually means for the average person.
Hmm.
When a government runs a deficit that large while the economy is barely growing at 1%, well, it signals massive future tax burdens.
And sustains deep inflation anxiety.
Exactly. The purchasing power of the median voter is constantly under threat. The federal treasury is bleeding cash to meet international defense obligations, while the domestic industrial base is stalling out.
It's like trying to fix the engine of a massive cargo plane while flying it straight through a Category 5 tariff storm.
Yes. That analogy perfectly sets up the central paradox of Dr. Noven's paper.
Right.
Conventional political wisdom dictates that when a plane is losing altitude, that rapidly, when inflation anxiety is high, housing is severely constrained, and major industries like steel are laying off 1,000 workers at a time, the pilot should be facing a mutiny.
Absolutely. The governing party should be bleeding support, and the opposition should be surging uncontrollably.
But they aren't.
No, they aren't. The incumbent captain just got a stronger mandate. So, if conventional wisdom is broken, how does the author explain what's actually happening?
Well, Dr. Noven uses Bayesian game theory to decode this.
Okay, Bayesian updating.
Yeah, it's originally a concept from probability and statistics. Think of it like using a navigation app on your phone.
Okay, I follow.
When you leave your house, your prior belief, based on historical data, is that your commute will take, say, 20 minutes.
Right.
But if you turn a corner and see just a sea of red brake lights, your app receives a new signal. It instantly updates its mathematical model and tells you the trip will now take 40 minutes.
So, in a political context, voters, donors, and political elites aren't static. They don't just pick a team and close their eyes.
Oh, exactly.
They're constantly receiving new signals about a leader's competence, and they rationally update their internal math on whether that person is fit to govern.
Precisely. So let's look at the prior belief we had before today. Just a few months ago, in January, the conservative opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre, secured a massive 87.4% approval rating at a party convention.
Wow, 87.4.
Yeah, in the political ecosystem, that is an overwhelming signal of internal cohesion. The grassroots base is completely energized.
But I mean, an internal party signal is very different from an external general public signal.
Totally.
And today's by-elections provided a massive contradictory signal to the rest of the country. This is the Bayesian update.
Yes.
The data from these three writings is shocking. Let's look at Terrebonne. That is a riding where the Conservatives previously held over 18% of the vote.
Right.
Today, their support completely collapsed to roughly 3%.
3%.
In Scarborough Southwest, they dropped to 18%.
The navigation app just saw the brake lights.
Yeah.
The broader electorate updated its math, and the resulting calculation heavily penalized the opposition.
I have to pause and push back on the premise here, though.
Oh, you're great.
If we look at the reality on the ground, people are struggling to pay rent, groceries are up, major industries are shedding jobs. Why is the transmission mechanism broken?
What do you mean?
Shouldn't economic stress automatically translate into opposition gains? Like, people are hurting financially. Why wouldn't they vote for the guy aggressively promising to fix the system?
Right. Well, the author identifies exactly why that historical transmission mechanism is currently broken. He calls it a credibility deficit.
A credibility deficit.
Yeah. We were in an era of profound structural macroeconomic anxiety. Voters aren't just annoyed about, like, minor tax tweaks,
Yeah, right.
They're worried about complex global tariffs, massive deficits, and macro stability.
Yeah.
In that specific environment, the median voter heavily prioritizes technocratic competence.
Which brings us to the resumes. Mark Carney literally used to run the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England.
Exactly. He signals institutional legitimacy and technical management.
Over insurgency.
Right. The conservative base absolutely loves their leaders' populist insurgent messaging. It fires them up.
Oh, for sure.
But the broader median voter, the people deciding these tight suburban ridings in places like Scarborough, is looking at the failing cargo plane and making a calculated choice. When the economic weather gets this rough, they systematically privilege demonstrated institutional competence over rhetorical insurgency.
They want a boring, credentialed central banker flying the plane, not a firebrand pointing out that the engines are smoking.
Exactly.
So, wait, if the median voter is rejecting the opposition's populist pitch and retreating to the safety of the current government, Where does all that frustrated populist energy actually go?
Hmm.
Because the anger about the economy doesn't just magically
I
evaporate.
know, it definitely doesn't. It bleeds outward to the edges of the map.
Ah,
The paper integrates constitutional mechanics into this economic model to show that when the center fails to provide a credible outlet for voter frustration, it creates massive centrifugal pressure on the Federation itself.
which perfectly explains what is happening right now out west, specifically in Alberta.
Yes.
The paper breaks down the situation under Premier Danielle Smith, and the author uses a crucial term here: instrumental separatism.
Instrumental separatism, meaning that for a large portion of the population, the threat of leaving Canada is a calculated bargaining posture.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're using the threat of exit instrumentally to force Ottawa to change its policies on energy regulations and fiscal transfers.
So it's leverage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Survey data actually shows that a clear majority of Albertans want to stay in Canada, but they are highly willing to use the threat of leaving as leverage.
But, I mean, the danger of a bluff is that it can accidentally become real if you change the institutional rule.
Oh, absolutely.
And the paper notes this bargaining posture is gaining serious legal teeth. You have Bill 54, which significantly lowered the threshold for citizen-initiated referenda.
Right. Let's unpack how that actually
Yeah,
works.
please.
If you lower the number of signatures required to force a public vote, a highly motivated fringe group like the Stay Free Alberta movement mentioned in the text can hijack the provincial agenda.
Wow.
Yeah, they can force a province-wide vote on an issue the moderate majority might not even care about.
Combine that with Bill 14, which actively curtails the ability of the courts to review the legal validity of these referenda, and suddenly the fringe has a direct, unchecked mechanism to trigger a constitutional crisis.
It transforms a theoretical bargaining chip into an actionable lever.
That's terrifying.
It is. And contrast that instrumental leverage-based approach with what is currently happening in Quebec.
Right.
The author describes the resurgence of the Parti Québécois under Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon as an ideological resurgence.
So, not a bluff.
Not at all. This isn't a bargaining tactic to get a better deal on carbon pricing. Secession is their core, historic, identity-based goal, and they are leading the polls for the October 2026 provincial election.
But the strategy they are using to achieve it has radically changed, right? Historically, sovereignty movements lose because voters get terrified about the economic fallout.
Right, they wonder, what happens to my pension? What currency do we use?
Exactly. The paper highlights the PQ's new strategy to counter this: a year-one transition budget.
Yeah, this is key.
They aren't just talking about language and culture anymore. They are laying out the exact fiscal math of a breakaway.
They are detailing the creation of independent monetary institutions to make secession look incredibly boring and fiscally safe to the average voter.
Wow, making it boring.
Yeah, they are actively trying to neutralize the economic terror that defeated the referendums in 1980 and 1995.
That is wild.
You have two massive provinces pulling away from the center for completely different reasons, one instrumental, one ideological, and it is happening precisely because the federal opposition is failing to present a unifying pan-Canadian alternative for all that frustrated energy.
It's like a dysfunctional corporate structure. Because the board of directors can't agree on a credible replacement for the CEO, the regional managers in the West and the East are threatening to spin off their departments and form their own companies.
That is exactly it, and that institutional risk is the core of the author's forward-looking projections.
Okay, the 2030 scenarios.
Right. Based on this Bayesian update today, a dominant governing party, an opposition suffering a credibility deficit, and these restless institutionalizing provincial movements, the game theory model outlines 4 distinct scenarios for the board by 2030.
The paper actually assigns strict probabilities to these futures, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Let's start with scenario A, which is given the highest likelihood at a 40% probability.
Okay, 40%.
This is a future of continued liberal dominance and a declining, structurally uncompetitive conservative party.
Which, I mean, sounds stable for the government, but...
But the author argues it is inherently dangerous for democratic accountability.
Right. Then you have scenario C sitting at a 25% probability. This is where the Liberals maintain their majority, but their entire strategic and legislative bandwidth is consumed by escalating subnational secessionism.
Right. They spend the whole time fighting fires in Alberta and Quebec.
Exactly. Scenario D is the darkest timeline for the political right, given a 10% probability.
And this involves a complete conservative collapse. Yeah, the party factionalizes, fractures entirely,
Yeah.
and we see a chaotic three-party restructuring of the Canadian political center right.
But there is one more, right? Scenario B.
Yes, the remaining 25% probability belongs to scenario B.
Yeah.
This is what Dr. Novin calls conservative technocratic renewal.
Okay.
And this is where the systemic argument of the entire paper crystallized for me.
Yeah.
The author isn't trying to advocate for a specific party here.
Right.
He is arguing that for the Canadian democratic equilibrium to survive, to mitigate the secessionist threat, and ensure the government is held accountable, scenario B must happen.
The system needs it.
Exactly. The mathematical model requires what game theorists call a robust competitive equilibrium.
Meaning you absolutely have to have at least two parties capable of credibly taking over the captain's chair of that cargo plane.
Yes. The author asserts that the Conservative Party needs a Carney-caliber leader.
Wait, like Mark Carney?
Well, he doesn't mean a clone of the current prime minister, but someone with equivalent elite economic credentials, deep institutional legitimacy, and broad electoral credibility in the suburbs.
I see.
It is very similar to the strategic shift Stephen Harper executed in the mid-2000s. He took a regional, ideologically rigid populist base and forced them into a highly disciplined, technocratic national posture.
Okay.
They need a pivot of that magnitude to win back the median voter whose navigation app currently refuses to route them toward the opposition.
Okay, I have to jump in here with a massive strategic question on how that actually works in reality.
You lay it on me.
If the conservative base, the grassroots, the people who knock on doors, the core donors, just gave their current highly populist leader an 87.4% mandate at a convention, how does a party actually coordinate a pivot toward technocratic renewal without completely fracturing its own foundation?
It's the golden question.
Right. Like, you can't just walk into a room of your most passionate supporters, tell 87% of them they are entirely wrong about what the country needs, and expect them to quietly fall in line behind a boring central banker type.
You've just identified the ultimate coordination problem in modern politics. It is the greatest vulnerability of political parties operating in a Bayesian framework.
Tell me more about that.
The specific signals required to pacify and energize an ideological base are the exact opposite of the signals required to update the beliefs of the moderate median voter.
Wow, they are totally opposed.
Yeah, the party is trapped. If they signal to the center, the base revolts and stops donating. If they signal to the base, the center gets terrified and votes for the incumbent.
So they are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yes. Resolving that tension without splitting the party in half is the single most difficult maneuver in a democracy.
It's walking a tightrope while both sides are trying to cut the wire. So, to pull all of this together for you listening, a few key by-elections and a handful of floor crossings on April 14th, 2026 did a lot more than just change the math in Parliament.
They triggered a massive Bayesian update across the entire country.
Yeah, they revealed a political landscape where, under the immense, crushing pressure of U.S. tariffs and domestic stagnation, technocratic credibility is currently trumping populist insurgency.
And the ultimate takeaway from Dr. Novin's model is that political systems are not static, unchanging monuments.
No.
They are highly sensitive, deeply reactive informational ecosystems. In times of crisis, credibility is the absolute ultimate currency.
Which makes total sense.
Right. When an opposition lacks it, the governing party consolidates power by default, and that massive reservoir of frustrated public energy leaks out to the edges.
It finds new outlets.
Yeah, threatening the very fabric of the Federation in places like Alberta and Quebec through legal, institutionalized secession threats.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought to mull over. The entire premise of this Bayesian game, this entire model of human behavior, relies on voters accurately updating their beliefs based on real-world signals.
Right. Receiving accurate information.
Exactly. A voter sees the inflation rate, they hear a speech, they watch a by-election result, and they rationally update their beliefs based on that reality.
Yeah.
But as we head toward 2030, what happens to this Bayesian game when AI-generated information or massive disinformation campaigns fundamentally break the signals that voters use to update their political scorecards?
That is a terrifying prospect. The math just completely collapses.
Exactly. If voters literally cannot trust the cards being flipped on the table, the game of poker is played with counterfeit cards. The game itself collapses.
Definitely something to keep a close eye on as the next hand is dealt.
Absolutely. Thanks for diving deep with us.